my show is called In Studio, Love Letters to the Muse. And for me, I didn't go to school for art. I've taken a class here and there with such and such person. But for me, pretty much all of my motivation comes from actually being in the studio. And that doesn't always mean creating. I've had some of my most enjoyable, and even it might sound weird to hear, but my most successful moments as an artist in my studio when I wasn't making anything. I was just there. I had my music. I had my my lighting that was creating this mood for me. And it's almost like the pregame show. I was kind of getting myself ready for whenever I would have more time, or just getting myself prepared to receive the next thing I wanted to make or to work on. And so I really just wanted to celebrate that. And I don't know if it's kind of across the board for artists, or if it's more because I do abstract work. I'm not representational. I have done representational work like I think almost anyone has, but it's like, okay, that's great. That guy's way better at a tree, so let him do the trees. And this is just kind of what tends to come out of me is more abstract, because for me it's really kind of all about process. I really love the process. Like Carol said, it's hard because you're not setting out to paint that tree. You're not like, yes, I have a photograph, I know what I'm doing, I need to make it look like it looks. It's kind of like, all right, what am I gonna do? So that's where the lighting and the music comes into, and just getting into that vibe and getting into that moment. And so I love being in the studio, and I just wanted to sing her a song. And so that's what this show is just that appreciation of that thing that we get to do. Ooh, we get to sit in there and we get to be surrounded by, the other little things that we've created, and the things that we've collected and from other artists. I like to put other people's stuff in my studio. I don't like to be surrounded by my stuff. I don't want it to creep in there and be like, oh, you should just make this again. And so I have some of Abby's stuff. I have just various artists. I really like to be surrounded by other people's stuff. And then my materials, even just laying them out and looking at them is like, almost for me, like creating a finished work. It's like, guys, I really like to be in my studio. So it's awesome. I also have a 3-year-old, so I really like to be in my studio. And so, yeah, also the other 700 things I really wanted to say to you. Basically, so Gundy gave me my first solo show in 2014 in her tiny little space, and I was so excited. And at that point, I was in my studio every day, every single day, all night long. I was binging episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation, because that was my thing. Remembering everything from my childhood and all those old episodes, and so at that time, when I had that show, it was wild. I mean, it was almost every single piece was a different medium. I'm sure when I came to intake, I was like, oh, I'm so excited, and Gundy was like, yeah, come on in. Great, cool. And I've kind of always been that way. I do kind of always aim to tell a story, just because there's always a story floating around in here that I need to get out. Now, I'm never, ever like, this is the story, you guys have to hear it exactly how it is. So this is a story to me, but kind of the point of my work is that I want every piece of mine to be a story to you. I want you to walk in and have this experience of relating to it and remembering a time in your life, or having feelings, that are yours. And so that's why I really love abstract work so much, is because it does let you have that freedom to make it your own. And I love looking at people's work and saying, oh my gosh, this reminds me of X, Y, Z. And then I can say to Carol, oh my gosh, this really, and she's like, what are you talking about? And then it's just kind of this magical moment that you get to have as both a creator of art and a viewer of art. And I think that's really special. And abstract is really what lets me do that. Going through the Rolodex right now, I'm trying to decide which to pick next. Does anybody have like a burning question right at this very moment?
What's the materials you do? What are you using?
So I used 2 different kinds of paper. I used a Fabriano watercolor paper, which is what I usually use. I usually use watercolor paper whether or not I'm doing watercolor, and truthfully I started in watercolor, but I haven't done a lot of watercolor through the years, but I use a lot of acrylic and basically water it down so that it's like watercolor. It just behaves a little bit differently and lets me do some techniques that I like to do that watercolor doesn't do. So that is a watercolor paper, hot press, and this is actually Bristol paper. So it's kind of like a vellum, but you know, yeah. And this was actually my first time working with oil pastels. I've never used oil pastels before. Something I was thinking earlier about the shows that I've had, and I'm like, do I do weird stuff in every show? Yes, I do. I almost always use a medium or a technique that I've never even tried before. And for me, that all goes along with the process. I love looking at masters, and I love looking at the work of people who are so dedicated to one medium and they explore within that medium, but that's pretty much what they do. I love that. Like I said, I didn't go to an art school, and so I don't feel super beholden to one medium, but also right now, as I said, I have a 3-year-old, motherhood hasn't been super easy for me, and I don't get a lot of time to work, and I don't get a lot of time to be in the studio, and so when I'm creating, it's basically what you're gonna get is me right in that moment. And you know, if you look at this work, you're gonna see something different than I had at a show at Kreuzer in June. You're gonna see something completely different. But right now, you're seeing exactly who I was in that studio, right in that moment where I had that chance to do this work. And there, you were seeing 22 very large pieces for me of who I was right in that moment in my studio. And for a long time, I think I kind of beat myself up about that, because it's like when somebody asks, oh yeah, you're an artist, awesome, what do you do? And I'm like, I art. Like, I do whatever I feel I have to do in that moment, you know, to get by. And I really, really love this body of work. And it's true, it's me, and it's true, and it's real, and so even if you're getting a different medium from me or a different story, it's always gonna be exactly me. It's like, it might as well be a fingerprint, it's an x-ray, it's my DNA just on there, however it needs to be expressed in that moment, and that is what makes me so proud of having my studio. It makes me so happy to be in my studio in that moment. And so that's what I wanted to do, was just to celebrate what a gift and what a joy that experience is, of just being in your studio, letting whatever happen is meant to happen right then. And yeah, that's probably 30% of what I wanted to tell you, so.
Chelsea, why did you pick those 2 then, from all the ones that are back there?
Because she wouldn't let me bring them all out. Which is really mean. Curators, you know. I picked these because they're on the 2 different papers. And actually, I created this series first, and then I moved on to that series. And I think these are just 2 of my, I can't even say favorite, they're 2 of my favorite. They're 2 that I think show the meat of the collection. So yeah, but I really do love them. I used different techniques. I used some familiar techniques, some new techniques, some new mediums. I realized at a certain point in creating shows throughout the years for various galleries and situations that I had a soundtrack. And so it was like in that moment where I was in the studio, I would want to listen to a certain thing. And so I would put that on, and it just became this driving force. And I'd be listening to it outside the studio, thinking what I was going to make later, and getting kind of revved up in that specific mood that I wanted to be in. And so I could tell you pretty much back to that first show in 2014, I could tell you exactly what I was listening to. And that kind of just infiltrates. It infiltrates me, it infiltrates my whole life. It's like I can take my studio with me. I'm driving my kid to school, and I'm like, yeah, let's listen to this, because I know I have 2 hours while she's at school where I can go down there and be like, so let's, warm up. And so it really is a lot based in music. And I'm so grateful that I can kind of take that and transform it into what I want to
Is there a
make.
style of music?
No, there's not. They're so different. They're so different. I have my go-tos that I can always, if I'm going in and it's not a specific show, but I'm going just to mess around, I have, my couple albums that I listen to a lot of soundtracks. And soundtracks are very powerful, because you push play and you're watching the movie in your head. You can't not, and you're feeling, the way you first felt when you saw that scene for the first time, even if you've seen it 8 million times, and it just gets in there and you're like, ooh, ah. And it just creates that mood, and it's really powerful. I love that. And that's part of being in the studio, and that's why I wanted to celebrate it, is because those moments,